Série, series. Série, series.
Joerg, Anna, thank you to be there with us. What's that? Before I ask some questions, I have the most important question for you. Is it complicated to create a show when you are husband and wife?
No, it's easy because, not easy, nothing's easy, but it's good because you're together 24 hours a day so you can work all the time. You can wake up first thing in the morning and say, wait a minute, I was thinking.
Okay. Can you tell us for the beginning the story of the show, your first idea, your first desire? Because Anna, you're not German, you're American. So
I'm not German, but I've been living in Germany for 13 years.
okay.
I have 2 German children, and I've paid my taxes in Germany now. And so no, I'm a novelist, and my husband has another show on in Germany that's a crime procedural that's been on for 15 years. It's a different kind of show. It's on like 25 episodes a year, and we had always thought about finding a project we could do together. And then we have small children, and they're living they're growing up in Berlin. They were born in Berlin, and we often talk about how you explain the history of the city to the children in a way that doesn't sound insane. And we're talking about how it's kind of like this fairy tale. There's these 2 sides, these brothers who are separated by a wall, and they have missiles aimed at each other, and then the missiles never go off, and then the wall comes down, and then now we live in this reunited city. So we wanted to work on a project together, and maybe Joerg can tell you that the seed of the idea comes from his time in the military in the 80s. So
yeah. So a little bit later in the late 80s, I was stationed in the West German Army near the Belgian border in the countryside, and I was listening to the Russian troops in the GDR. So I was, sort of a spy, not a real spy, just listening. Yeah. So they taught me Russian or tried to teach me Russian in 6 months. I had 8 hours of Russian a day, and then I just had to press record when they said certain things, right? So at some point, the Russians greeted us while we were sitting there, listening to them, and they called us out by name. They said, hi, Gefreiter Winger or something. And so we knew that they knew who we were, and they knew that we listened to them, and we were thinking, who is that mole? Who told them? Is it my friend to the left or to the right, or my boss, or who could it be? We never found out, and that was kind of the beginning of the story. So then Anna had the idea of telling this story from the perspective of the mole. So we made the mole, the East German spy, the protagonist of our series.
Okay. And why have you choose the point of view of the East first with your hero and not West, for example?
Well, I'm not from the East or from the West, obviously. So, but I've only ever lived in former East, and my husband's show. He's from the West, but the show that he makes in Leipzig, which was in the East. It was former East, and so over the years, we have a lot of friends from the East, and I think there was a core thing that always interested me was the fact that from the outside, people think that everybody in the East was waiting for the wall to come down. But actually, people were just living their lives in the East also. And it was interesting to take a character who was apolitical and not looking for change and force him into an unusual situation and see how he would deal with the world. And so, in fact, all of the heroes in our show work for the Stasi. So it's kind of an anti-hero situation. Sorry. Our broadcaster isn't here, and he was supposed to be here, and I'm worried that he's lost.
Oh.
We need the broadcaster.
He is here somewhere, but he's not in this room, so it's too bad. Anyway.
He's probably in a much warmer room now. Yes, the other thing is, I think, and that's the other side of choosing someone from the east who goes to the west, is that we wanted to show West Germany, because so many movies that we have seen about the Cold War take place in East Germany. Goodbye Lenin, Life of Others, and yeah. And so people tend to think of the GDR as the country that has disappeared. But I, as a West German, can tell you that West Germany, the old West Germany, has disappeared as well. So we wanted to take a look at West Germany in the 80s.
And the show was already broadcast in Germany?
No,
No.
it's only been on in the U.S.
Okay.
It's the weirdest. I don't know how to even begin to describe why this happened, but it was bought by the U.S. by Sundance, which is a small channel from AMC, and we met with them last summer before we started shooting. They had read the scripts, because I wrote the scripts in English. To clarify something even more complicated, I write in English. We shot it in German, and they read the scripts. And then maybe you could just text Philip so that he knows where we are. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Right. Husband and wife.
Yeah. No, our German broadcasters wandering around in the sun, you know. Anyway, and so then we're now on episode 3 broadcast last night in the U.S. And I'm out of it because I've been getting up at 5 in the morning to live tweet the episode, and it's been really interesting to have that interaction with the audience. You know, you have this kind of immediate feedback, and it's sort of addictive.
What was the feedback?
No, it's
in
really
general?
positive, and now they're really into the characters. You know, now we're on episode 3, and what I find really touching is how interested they are in the language. And the episode last night took place in Brussels, so we actually also had French, and there was a lot of jokes about, we really like how it's multi-language. People were tweeting like jokes, their own version of jokes in German and in French also. And you get a sense that there is an interest, I mean, in certain pockets, definitely, in international experience and international language. And it's as if Americans have sort of discovered that the world exists, slightly. Which, I mean, I'm American, you know, but I can tell you, I've lived in Europe a long time, and it wasn't like that 10 years ago. So there definitely seems to be an interest, and that I find that very touching and exciting. Yeah.
And the critical in Germany, as a press, I've seen the show in Germany. Do you have any feedback about the show in Germany with the press, maybe, or professional audience? I don't know, because it's interesting for me to know if how Germany can feel the show. You know, because it's an historical show, and you have 2 countries. You have the East and West to create. Some question after about that, because maybe it was complicated to have the both side to create and recreate.
Oh, in terms of the production process, after. But the reaction in Germany was we showed 2 episodes, actually almost like a rough cut of the first 2 episodes at the Berlin Film Festival, which opened its gates for the first time to TV series, which is in and of itself a significant move, and shows you that there's a lot of appetite for TV series now, just coming up in Germany. I mean, didn't used to be the case.
Almost the same in France.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I think we're on parallel tracks in some ways, and I think that's also the reason why people really liked the show, loved the show. We got very positive reviews in Germany. And one reason for that is, I think, that there's such a hunger for this kind of show. You know, they're like, the Scandinavians can do it, and you know, the UK does it, and there's Les Revenants from France, and you know, there's so many great things. So why don't we have a great series? And I think they're waiting for it, and they think that this might be one. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the writing, about the writing process and the production process. You are the executive producer of the show, but how did you sell the show to the channel, to the broadcaster? First, it was just a pitch, it was all the story, it was, I don't know, what kind of document or story you tell to your podcast? to convince them?
Joerg and Nico, who's also the executive producer who's running UFA, they pitched it, right? But I wrote the pilot on spec. So
With the dialogue.
everything.
Everything.
Yeah, we had a finished pilot, and that's a very unusual thing to do in Germany. But it was in part because I felt that I had to prove that I could write it in English, because there was definitely, at the time, the sense that it was a negative if I was writing in English, but I can't write in German. And so I felt that I had to prove my ability to work with my understanding of the material, and also the ability to write it in, that it would still work if I was writing in English. And then Joerg did all the German polish, so we had to convince them that this was possible. But the truth is they came on board very enthusiastically, and they gave us a lot of freedom. Should I just speak to the writing process? Just to the writing process, Germany doesn't have the kind of writers' rooms that they have in America, because the financing of people are paid per script, not for their time in the room. So it's difficult to get the commitment of writers like...
It's the same in Europe,
Yeah.
in France too, Great Britain.
So we had some screenwriter friends who could write in English, worked with us at the beginning on the first brainstorming. We planned together we planned the characters and the series arc, and we created the series together. And then we had 4 writers who worked with us. They each wrote 1 episode. And then I rewrote the whole, because so that it would all be one voice, basically, which I guess is typical of a head writer job, but it's just, in Germany, it's not, they don't have that usually. So I just did it like that. And then, just to finish the process, then it was translated into German, and then Joerg did the German polish. So it was a multi-step process.
But so it's definitely we kind of created our own system within the German system. But the German system, I guess, will have to change if they want more of this kind of series.
Because not everybody's working with their wife. Shoot a gun in the morning and be like,
well, and then the production. Well, we thought at the beginning we thought we could hopefully shoot everything on the real locations in Bonn, in Cologne, in the Eifel, and on the countryside where the military base is located. But in the end, we shot almost everything in and around Berlin, and just had a few establishing shots from the real locations. So again, we don't have the kind of budget that allowed us to become a traveling circus around Germany.
Can you tell us how many episodes you shoot, and 8, and the budget?
Yeah,
per episode or the global?
It's 8 episodes, and it's about it's less than €1 million, but not per episode, but not much less.
But we cross-bordered, which is, I think, an interesting point, which is that we had 2 directors, and we shot, we finished all the scripts, and then we shot by location, which is also sort of atypical for a German setup, but it was a way of saving money, and it worked out really well. We had a lead director who set the look, and then we had another director who shot the same way, and they did a really sort of seamless, they did it really well together. And they would do like one location, we would shoot his scenes, her scenes, and then like this, so that we didn't have to build the historical locations twice. Because, if you go to Berlin, you think it looks like the 80s, actually. But it doesn't. That was a real surprise for me, because I always thought like nothing's changed here. But actually it is very different, and it was surprising how expensive it was to shoot like people running through the streets, for example. I had all these like, crazy chase scenes that had to be toned down, because to me, I've always thought it looked so much like the 80s, but you have to, once you start changing cars on the street, it gets expensive. So.
We also had decided not to go for complete historical accuracy. So if you look at if you look at the scene in the supermarket in episode 1, yeah. Yes, it is, and at the same time, it is not what a West German supermarket looked like in 1983. It is just more colorful. There's more variety. It's slightly surreal, almost in the way how perfect it is arranged, and we try to get into the perspective of our hero, how he perceives it, and
Psychological authenticity.
psychological truth more rather than accurate in every detail. And also, I think if today, if you looked at a West German supermarket in 1983, you would wonder: is this the GDR or is it West Germany?
And Anna, can you say you are the showrunner of the series? Are you involved in the casting, in the choice of the directors, in the artistic?
I was very involved in casting and the choice of the casting and choice of the directors, but I would say that it was like I was the head writer creator and Joerg was the showrunner creator, because again, you need a lot of hands on deck to make this kind of show. It's really different from in Germany. Things tend to be made piecemeal. There's a producer, there's a writer, but they don't work together in the same way. It's like each person does their job or their part. And in this case, certainly I was, my background is as a photographer, so I'm used to, it was definitely, I was very interested in the executional part, but I personally had nothing to do with like the financing budget part, the making. We were way over budget before we started shooting, for example. And Joerg's expertise, because he's been making a long-running show that like makes 25 episodes a year every year, he really understands how to streamline production, how to streamline the scripts, so you're not losing the story, even if you have to tighten the budget, these kinds of things. He really was the one doing that. And that's something that I think not very many people in Germany know how to do, is like make a long series. We keep having these conversations with Americans that are interesting, where they're like, oh, we build, in Europe you can only make 6 episodes or 8 episodes, but we build stuff with legs and we know how to make long running shows. And I'm like, well, my husband's made like 320 episodes of his show. And they're like, really? So I think it's it was a really good collaboration, and it's kind of,
It's also traditionally the director is in charge in Germany, which is from its tradition in TV movies and miniseries, where the director is there from the beginning to the end.
Same tradition in France.
Yeah. See.
but it
Yeah.
wasn't like that.
And
Yeah. Directors that we really believed in and worked with them really closely, but it was definitely like a creator-driven project.
And what was your relationship with the broadcaster? Did she interfere?
he left us, it seems.
Is it really a problem?
It was very
They
good.
interfere a lot or not in the text?
Well, it was unusual already from the beginning, because they had hit a certain point where they had to rethink their drama strategy at RTL, and they decided to go with us, which was it's a quite unusual program for RTL. It's a new flavor for them. And they were very encouraging from the beginning, and they also we didn't shoot a pilot, they didn't put the pilot through market research. All the usual obstacles in Germany were not present, because they just said, we love this, we want this, we order 8 episodes and you go and shoot it. And then they connected us with one producer from the network, Ulrike Leibfried, who we worked very closely with, and she became part of our inner circle, and that was very satisfying creatively, because they basically believed that we should make the show and we should have the creative freedom to do what we want.
It means at what moment did you have the green light after the writing? Did you have to write all the episodes?
Well, after the pilot, after we had the spec script, they ordered 8 scripts, and then once we had the scripts, once we had 2 or 3 scripts, they greenlit the series.
It went really quickly. I started writing the pilot in December of 2013, and we finished shooting in December 2014. It was crazy.
We'll never do it again. And not like that.
I hope it's a new German model.
No, it was really. We knew. I kind of knew that there's this kind of courage from a broadcaster usually doesn't last that long. So you want to take advantage of it. So I gave them, when they asked me, when are you going to shoot this? I said, you know, in August. That was January. And they were like, and I thought they would, you know, carry me out of the, and
Don't worry, I'll just make my wife work all night.
and then they said, okay. They nodded. They said, okay. And then we were basically running, you know, for our lives. Yeah.
Don't you want
No,
to
it's
work
very
with us, Johnny?
interesting. I think
Johnny,
I don't know.
today?
You know, you have the one vision model in Denmark, and maybe you have the wedding model in Germany. You know, it seems to work very well. And we have a story like this in France because a famous series called Fais pas ci, fais pas ça, don't do this, don't do that. It's a comedy show, and the two creators of the series are husband and wife, so it works very well. I think. Do you have any questions in the audience?
My first question was, I don't think there was music in supermarkets also in 1983.
There also wasn't
although
music in the
obviously Sweet
Kazana.
Dreams were the perfect tune for
Yeah.
his experience.
Yeah.
I must say, sorry for this personal remark, but I'm born in 1964 in communist Czechoslovakia, and I was for the first time in the West in 1984 in England. I remember my impression of the Western supermarket, so I can assure you it was very different from the shops we had it
Yeah.
in the Eastern Bloc.
You know
But
what?
my real question was about how did you move from the pilot to the series, and so the whole pilot was shot on location. There was no sets built.
We shot the whole show at once. We didn't shoot the pilot separately from the series.
I just thought you were shooting the pilot
And
first.
No. The pilot script. Sorry, I should have been clearer. When I talked about the pilot, I talked about the pilot script.
Okay.
And then we shot everything on location. We didn't build a single studio.
I wanted to say one thing that was really interesting, I mean, given your memory, one thing that was really interesting about the project was that it's living history. So, you know, the people who experienced that time are still alive. And everybody brought so much material to the project, like all the actors, all the, you know, both directors, all the writers, and during the process of making it, we had so many conversations with, like, you know, parents at school, or, you know, just everybody had something that they could bring to the story, and a lot of people's stories made it into the show in some way or another. So that was a real privilege, especially for me as a foreigner, to kind of get to know the place I live better, you know.
A little question: you have a set of very young main actors, main characters, and of course young actors who, were most of them born afterwards. How did they perceive the world they were actually representing?
Ancient history.
They couldn't believe it. I mean, they kind of knew that there was a wall, but the more they prepared for their roles, they were stunned. Because our main actor was exactly born in 1990, so we had this discussion about the older actors. Should everybody who's East German, you know, be played by an East German, by a West German? And then that question didn't come up for the young people because they all were born after the wall came down.
No, you know, we in a way, the inception of the project had to do with I've told the story before, but our daughter came home from school when she was like 7, and she says to us at dinner, "There was a wall," and we were like, "Really? Where?" And she's like, "Right here in Berlin," you know, and we were like, "What happened?" You know, because we were you always wonder, how do you explain this? What happened? She's like, "They knocked it down with their hands, and then everybody hugged," and we were like, you know, like, someone has to make a show about that.
Did you create the show as an 8-part, or was it with your discussion with the broadcaster, or is it possibly a returning series in your mind? Or?
Returning series in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah. We always imagined it as 83, 86, 89.
Okay.
Yeah.
We really want this to lead to the happy ending, basically. You know, the miracle almost. When you look at so many points later in this series, in the first season, we will get to a point where there's almost a nuclear escalation, which is a true story in November of 1983. And it is amazing that we got away without any shots getting fired.
Thanks. I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was superb. I wondered whether, when you said you created a system inside the German system, your own system, wasn't quite sure what you meant in terms of how different is it for other producers and writers developing drama in Germany.
Well, we
compared-
did get we took the role of creator, for example, and the title of creator was given to us by the broadcaster, which is very unusual in Germany. So that's
Yes. Oh, I see.
that's one thing.
No, but just in terms of what you're asking about, like the writers' room and all of that, right?
How is it different from most other productions
Okay.
in Germany to be developed compared to yours?
Well, the role of the creator and having a head writer, both of those things don't exist normally. Often the way it works is that individual writers write each episode and there's a producer, you know? But the episodes, because Germans don't have a tradition of horizontal storytelling, you know, they're more closed circuit episodes, or I don't know how you call that in English, self-contained, then they don't, it doesn't need to be in one voice in the same way, right? And this is more like writing a novel, so it just required it all to be rewritten in a way that is not a tradition there.
Also, the fact that we had a writers' room and we basically we still paid the writers for the scripts, but not for their time in the writers' room. You know, we basically said, you know, this is a great project. Please come on board. Please understand we don't have a budget for this. This is what I mean. Whereas in the US and in Scandinavia, all these things are completely taken for granted. That the writers have that time exclusively for the show. That they spend time in the writers' room. That they get paid for it. But we didn't have the time, and also I think not really the patience to negotiate all this up front. We just wanted to show that it's possible to do this kind of thing in this way, and then we did.
I mean, I think that also sometimes being naive is helpful, because I didn't understand going into it that I'd have to rewrite all the scripts. I somehow thought they would all magically connect, and that didn't work, and so that wasn't also in my contract, but I just did it anyway. And I think, you know, if we had had more time, we could have done it like an English series, and I could have written the entire thing. But with the amount of time that we had, there had to be other people writing scripts. So it was, and now having had that experience, I think it makes the work richer to have more people involved. I totally believe in it. You know, it's really, you write a novel by yourself, and you make TV with other people, and that was the collaborative part of it made it better and better. And it was a great privilege to have that. I'm so glad we did it like that. And now we're trying to figure out with season 2 how to streamline it in a way going into it that we know that it's done this way. Because, and actually the Danish model is an interesting example, because it's sort of a reduced version of an American writer's room. So they have a head writer and episode writers. And, you know, I've talked with the people from Borgen about that for a while, because it's sort of a similar format in terms of 8 episodes. And so, you know, just trying to figure it out. Yeah, that was another thing. You know, okay, I'm living in Germany. I can only write in English, and so I used basically friends of mine who could write in English, and that was a limited pool. It was a very unusual process, you know. We had it translated, but then he rewrote it. I mean, it had to be. He did all the German polish, yeah. So I can speak German, but I can't write in German, you know. So it was like and obviously he speaks really good English, so it was like we could work together on it.
I have a question about the political content of your series, because I feel in the first episode, you know, maybe you have the good and you have the bad. You know, it seems like if East were the bad and the West is the good. It feels like this when in the point of view you propose in the first episode. There is a kind of yes, because you have the bad guys of the spies of the RDA of the East, and you know the sympathetic general at West, and there is something. And I know it's not your objective, but there is something like this. I don't know how the audience feels about that, but no, don't think.
I mean, that was not what we were trying to do. We basically had a rule in the writers' room saying we don't have good or evil at all. We just have characters who believe that if they succeed, the world will be a better place. And so everybody's fighting for their agenda, and there's plenty of darkness, like on every side of the equation, I think.
Don't you think the East seems to be more telegenic? Yes, maybe, because it's quite it's something
It's
very different.
It's so different.
It's so different. It's a cold war. It's a cold world.
Yeah.
So that's why I have this feeling.
That people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You know, because actually, when you look at pictures of West Germany, you think that looked pretty grim too. I mean, compared to contemporary life, it's it was. We had to really work on the differences to make it feel different enough.
That's why all the Chirons show up, because at the beginning we weren't thinking about Chirons, and then when we started selling it internationally, when Fremantle started to sell it internationally, they were like, "Where are we? You know, what's west, what's east, what's yeah." So.
Do you is your broadcaster here? No.
No, the broadcaster, but I think he'll show up this evening. I hope.
So I think you are working on season 2.
Yes, we have just started to
86.
think about season 2. Yes,
but do you have a comment? Yes. No.
Well, there's a development. There's a
green light for the writing.
But it's not true.
Maybe.
There's a green light for the writing. Yeah.
So you are waiting for the audience of the first broadcast in Germany.
Yeah.
To order the season 2.
Because RTL is the main partner in this, so they, for them, of course, even though they are very happy about all the international success, they want to see how it does in the end in Germany.
And do you have a number, a percent? You have
No.
to. No, you don't know. It's good in US.
Yeah, they've been
Yes, and it was on the cable.
On Sundance.
On
Yeah.
Sundance.
Yeah. They go live. They count live +3, which means live airing and the next 3 days. And we really see now how the market has shifted in the US, because a minority of the people watch it in the first night, and then there's so many people then who, it's like, I think it's 3/4 almost of the audience is coming in after the first airing of the episode. Yeah. I know something about it, but I'm not supposed to say. Yeah. They're always waiting for what the competition does, right? I said something about the sales in Russia, which I deeply regret now, because I got into a lot of trouble.
And don't you think it's a problem if an American writer come to Germany and create series?
I'm actually British and American.
Hola, the worst.
I don't know. I mean, I live there too. This is my country. It's the
No, it's-
my. I have it's. Oh, actually, yes, that's true. I think it's a great place to have a writer's room, because everybody loves Berlin, and it's a really great place to live. And I have a very nice office in the Tempelhof Airport, which is the 4th biggest building of the world, and is like where the Beehive was. It's where all the spies were. Hitler was building, airplanes in the basement. It's a crazy building. And I think there's advantages to creating stuff in Berlin, actually, not just for Americans, but for lots of people. Even if you're not necessarily, for example, I know quite a few people shooting in Prague, but for some reason the writers don't like to live there as much. Maybe it's expensive, or I don't know, the language is difficult. So there are advantages to Berlin for sure. I don't know.
Just one last question about: did you work with the Secret Service or some people of the Stasi?
Yes.
Yes.
Stasi. Actually, our characters are in the HVA, which is the foreign arm of the Stasi, and we had a consultant who was in the HVA, and also people from the CIA, from of course the BND. Like we talked with a lot of people who are diplomats at that time.
Yeah, we had a lot of sources. First members of the Green Party, former American ambassador to Berlin, and they all had amazing stories. And I would say also one of the learnings of this is it is a great model to have a fictional story based on a historical reality, because the reality is always more mind-boggling than you would think when you start the project.
Vas-y.
If I understood, I'm not sure I understood you, but for you, in your mind, the second season is 93.
86.
Oh no, 86. You go.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right. So, so then you make at least a 10-year jump for the second season. It's
No,
like,
3 years.
no, 80. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 86. Around,
83
no, 3 years,
and
okay.
89 is the year the
So-
wall came
No,
down.
because
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So I was going to ask, how do you do with the casting? But that's the model, the Peaky Blinders model. They just jumped 10
Yeah.
years, like.
You know
and
what's
that-
funny? You get to reboot it, which makes it exciting also for us.
Yeah.
It's like a different feel, a different look, different directors, different. Well, some
Sure.
different cast. Well, no, not the whole cast. Just some. Not our main characters. Oh, hero, of course. Oh my God, we love our hero. Yes. Yeah, no, Lenora, Yona, all the main characters stay, but just not the characters from the Bundeswehr.
Great. Any questions? Okay, thank you very
I'm just wondering, as a writer from another country, did you feel intimidated tackling such a very German subject? Like
No.
saying you wouldn't without your German husband and taking away the language barrier no, you feel like that's a challenge.
Imagine if you were asked to write a show that takes place in the future,
Yeah,
right? Or on another planet.
yeah.
I mean, people always ask me, like,
But then you
which
have a
fairy
freedom to
tale
come up
this-
with it.
this story is like, right? I mean,
Yeah.
somehow that's a question now. Like, which fairy tale did you model the story on? And now my answer is that it's like the Wizard of Oz, or Alice in Wonderland, because in a way we're making up the world. You know, you're always making it up. It's always your imagination, and you get input from history. But this is Germany, but it could be, next show could take place on the moon, and then I'd have to make up the moon too. And I don't know. I personally don't find that a stumbling block. But wait till it comes out in Germany, maybe everybody will tell me I should have found it a stumbling block. But as a writer, I didn't find that.
But maybe it also gives you a freedom to not have that ballast, or to
Yeah,
have
it's not my
to have
country,
an
so that-
outside perspective.
yeah.
It maybe gives a bit of a fresh twist on it,
Maybe.
which it feels like.
Super série, bravo. Et donc la série sera diffusée sur Canal+. Joerg, tu sais quand?
Non, je sais que ça va diffuser sur Canal+ après RTL, après l'automne.
Ok, d'accord, merci. Et encore bravo parce que c'est super. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.